My name is Gavin Evans, and this is my review of Better Call Saul Season 1, and this will be a spoiler-filled review, so if you haven't seen it, go and watch it, then come back and watch this review because I will be going in depth. Now, Breaking Bad is my second favorite TV show ever. It is just perfection. Brilliantly written, brilliantly directed, brilliantly acted, just perfect in every single way. And I've heard amazing things about Better Call Saul, so I started this season with sky high expectations. And after watching this first season, it didn't come anywhere close to that level, unfortunately. Like the first two episodes, I found to be actively bad. Episode 3 started to grab my interest a bit. Episode 4 and 5, not great, but not that bad. Episode 6, I just found to be unneeded. And then it started to find its way at the end of the season to the point where I am intrigued to see what happens next. But I still found this season underwhelming as a whole. And I think a big part of that is it's just unclear what the main plot of this season is supposed to be. It focuses on one thing, then another, and then back to that first thing, and then to something else entirely. And it just feels so unfocused. It feels scattered. It feels like the original plan for this show was for it to be episodic, and then they decided to not go that route. And it just doesn't feel like it was building towards anything, which really left me underwhelmed. Now, the first storyline I found to be a terrible start to the show with these two skateboarders trying to scam someone, but then they scammed someone else by mistake, which I don't buy that someone else was driving by that same spot in the same vehicle at the same time. It's just very doubtful. And then they follow this random old lady who then turns out is the grandma or the mom of Tuco. And it just gets so over the top so fast, and it didn't work for me. I do like the scene where Jimmy's negotiating with him, trying to save their lives, but then there's no mention of them again, and it's just like, what was the point of that? Like, I'm sure Jimmy's going to be involved with these people later on, but by the end of this season, it feels so unneeded. And then we've got this whole Ketterman's plot, which gets introduced in like the first episode, I believe. And it just felt like a standard case to begin, but then it becomes more relevant as the season progresses, so that really threw me off. And then this whole plot as a whole just did nothing for me. They wanted a good deal, they got that deal, but they didn't like it, so then they go to Jimmy, and then Jimmy steals the money back from them just to make that same good deal. What was the point of all that? Did it change the characters in any way? What kind of impact does this have? And just nothing really. You know, we also got this whole situation where Nacho wants that money and he's staking out their home and he gets arrested. And then Jimmy proves his innocence and Nacho leaves. And it's like, what was the point of that? So I didn't really care for this story either. And then we've got this whole backstory regarding Mike, which I found to be completely unneeded. Like, I love Mike as a character, but that one episode, what was the point of it? You know, it felt like the season 2 episode in Stranger Things where Eleven goes to the city. And I'm just like, why do we need this? And don't get me wrong, this episode is much better than that episode, but it still adds nothing. And then Mike steals the notepad and then gives it back for some reason, and that's it. He does a few random unrelated things, and it's just, I don't know, I just don't think we needed Mike's backstory, and we definitely didn't need it to fill out an entire episode. It's not like anything with the cops happened this season. So as of right now, in season 1, which is the only season I've seen, this one just feels irrelevant as well. And then we've got this one other mini subplot with this guy named Marco, and I get that he's meant to be a representation of who Jimmy used to be, but it just isn't effective. And when Marco dies in the last episode, I was just like, wow, there was no build up to that at all. And then it turns out Jimmy was actually there for a week, and it didn't feel like that. It just felt like one night. So I don't know, nothing about this worked for me either. And then we've also got this whole Cena home plot, which was definitely the best of the bunch because the twists and turns it takes with the characters here and how the story evolves is really well handled. But it's only present in the last 3 episodes, so everything beforehand feels even more irrelevant. Like the priority this season was clearly to establish Chuck and Jimmy's relationship, so get rid of the whole Ketterman plot, get rid of everything with Tuco, and just make the plot of this season that Jimmy's trying to be successful but he can't get work, so he goes into elder law where he then discovers this huge opportunity where him and his brother reconnect only for him to realize that his brother's been fucking him over his entire life and to see how deeply that affects him. That is a good story. But then you've got all this other stuff and now it feels less focused and more messy. And you can just keep Mike as a supporting character. We don't need to know him. We already knew him from Breaking Bad. So the story as a whole was just all over the place for me. It's definitely much more subplot reliant and episodic than Breaking Bad ever was, which just isn't my favorite kind of storytelling just because it feels so random and unstructured. But it does start to hit its stride in the last few episodes. Now, if we're talking about the characters, Bob Odenkirk is great in Breaking Bad, and he's great here. He carries this show incredibly well, and you can just tell that he's trying his hardest to be the best version of himself, but he keeps falling short time and time again. Then you've also got Rhea Seehorn, who I thought was fantastic. Kim is my favorite character so far. She's just so great and cool. And you can see that she really genuinely cares for Jimmy, which I really like. So I love their friendship. You also got Michael McKean, who's good as Chuck. And like I said, I love where they end up taking him. Like that reveal is able to have lots of weight behind it. But everything regarding him before that just didn't work for me. I don't like the whole aspect of his character where he can't be near electricity, but it turns out he can, but he just thinks he can't. And just none of that worked for me in any way. Jonathan Banks is once again great as Mike, and I do love this character. I just don't like the way he's handled this season. Like when I saw him in the first episode and he's the parking attendant, I'm just like, oh, that feels very fan servicey. And keep in mind, I haven't seen Breaking Bad in a long time, so maybe they do reference it in it, but I don't remember. And just the fact that we see him right off the gate and it's just like, hey look, it's Mike, didn't really work for me. And like I said, we didn't need a whole episode dedicated to him, and that one episode where he's that guy's bodyguard, completely unneeded. So it doesn't feel like they know what to do with him quite yet. But anytime he's on screen, I still enjoy his presence. And then you've also got Patrick Fabian, who I think's really great as Howard. He's so over the top and douchey, but by the end of this season, you start to find out why, and you understand him and like him a bit more. Like, he can be a nice guy, but his loyalties get in the way of that. So I really like that aspect of his character. And Michael Mando and Raymond Cruz are also perfectly fine here. So the cast does a good job with the material they're given to work with. Another big issue I have with this show though is something that I call the prequel effect. I already mentioned that the first time we see Mike feels very fan servicey, but then there's also one flashback where we see Jimmy. And I don't know how long ago this is supposed to be, but he's clearly meant to be younger, so they make him wear baggy pants and a backwards hat. And it just looks very goofy. Like, it looks like Steve Buscemi in that meme. How you do, fellow kids? That's the impression I got from that scene. And then he also tells this one guy, oh, it's all good, man. It's all good, man. It's all good, man. Hinting that's where he got his name from. And I really hate that. I think that's ridiculously stupid. But some other positives I do have. I think it's very well shot. And there are some very good lines of dialogue, mainly from Mike. There's this one line where he says, you know what happened. But the question is, can you live with it? And I love that. And then there's this one discussion with him and this one guy where he's like, I know good crooks, bad cops, bad priests, honorable thieves. And that's a really fantastic line, so I love that. And some other negatives I do have. Some scenes do drag, specifically this one scene in the last episode where Jimmy's hosting bingo. I get what they're trying to do, but it just goes on for far too long. I also found that, I know this show was on a network, so they have commercial breaks, but every cut to a commercial break just feels so weird. Like they need a few more seconds of every single scene before they cut to black, because it just feels very choppy. You watch a show like Lost, which is heavily flawed, but at least during every time it cuts to black for the commercial break, it feels like the scene is properly ended. But here, it just feels like there should be a few more seconds of every scene before it cuts to black. So I really don't like that. And there's this one scene where the cops arrest Chuck because he stole a newspaper, and I just don't buy that they would care that much about this one newspaper, so there's that as well. But look, it may sound like I'm being very hard on this show, and I definitely got my issues, but the cast does do a very good job. And by the end, I liked where they took the main character, and I got a sense of where they're going to take him. But up until that point, it is very unfocused and messy. There's all these different plots and characters that just weren't needed. If it just focused on the brothers' relationship more in the scene or case, it would have been simpler but more effective. Plus, Kim is such a great character. I hope she's in it till the end of the show because she's so cool. So, anyways, I'm going to go ahead and give Better Call Saul Season 1 a 5.5 out of 10. Not a great start, but hopefully it gets better from this point forward. But anyways, have you seen Better Call Saul Season 1? What did you think about it? Let me know in the comments down below. Make sure you like, make sure you comment, make sure you subscribe. Stay tuned for some more videos soon, and Gavin out.